Hi everyone, my name is Ava and I'm an American living in the Netherlands. And I'm not gonna lie to you, things are looking pretty bad in America. Oh my god. Things happening in America right now keep me up at night.
And I'm someone with a 7-month-old baby, so that's really saying something.
So today I wanted to talk about those things that I used to believe as an American living in the United States that I don't believe anymore. And I'm gonna share the reasons why. I think it's important to talk about these things, especially now, because of all the myths that I think are going around in America that have led to the current situation. So let's ease our way into it. The first thing that I want to talk about is something that has kind of been there in American culture for a while. So it's not something new, but it's this idea that success in life equals moving up in your career and earning more money. So it's all about earning more money. Now, I didn't necessarily believe that for myself personally, but I did subscribe to those ideals. So if someone was doing well in life, to me as an American, that meant that they were earning a lot of money. So I did see this correlation. However, myself personally, like I chose to study linguistics. I didn't go into linguistics for the money, obviously. I could have been fulfilling my legacy as a brown-skinned American and become a doctor, but no, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be creative and do something with culture and language and yeah, move to Europe. Well, I guess some dreams do come true. But anyway, moving to the Netherlands has shown me that there are other paths in life. So in America, if someone were to be like, I work in private equity, for instance, people would almost immediately, think, oh, money and success. Whereas here in the Netherlands, that's not necessarily the case. If you were to be like, oh, I work in private equity, people might even be like, why? Are you doing that for the money?
You could try something else like, I don't know, selling pictures of your feet on the internet. At least you're making someone happy with that.
Okay, so if your path to success in life is not just making more money, then what is it?
Living in the Netherlands has taught me that you can just take money out of the equation.
So for instance, at your job, in your career, you could just be really, really good at what you do and keep getting better at what you do. And that on its own is a sign and measure of success. If you're great at something that you do, that's wonderful. And another path to success that I view here in the Netherlands especially is instead of having more money, you have more time. So people will often, if they move up in their job or they start earning more money for whatever reason, right? Like we have good labor unions here, maybe your salary increased. So then people will choose to work less hours and kind of keep the same salary, maybe a little less, but then you have more time. So if you're working part-time here in the Netherlands, first of all, you are part of the majority. But if you're like working only 3 days a week, that's wonderful. And I see that as being quite successful. Like you are someone who is not close to retirement age per se, but you're still working part-time and you live a comfortable life. That's awesome. So there are obviously so many more ways in life in which you can be successful and be happy and fulfilled without it having to do anything with money. But I wanted to show that even in your job and your career, even in that specific part of your life, there's still other measurements of success. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is very much related to the first thing, because what do you do when you have more money? You buy more stuff. And that is the second myth that I no longer believe, which is that you need material things to make you happy. Now, this was always something that initially I kind of saw as, well, that's just what you say in order to make yourself feel better.
Because there are things that you could buy that would bring you at least a little bit of happiness, right?
But if you think about it, it's really gotten out of hand. And this whole ideal is also present in the Netherlands, definitely. There are ads in the Netherlands. They are trying to push this idea that you should buy stuff. Of course, any country basically does this, but in America, it's big. I mean, you go to America and you get off the plane, you leave the airport in your cab, you will probably go on a highway and just see these like billboards full of ads. There'll be ads for lawyers, like for stuff that, for like, if you're injured, you can contact a lawyer. Like there are billboards for that in places. And when I go back now, I kind of look at them and go, oh yeah, that's normal. That's not something unique that I'm just noticing today. This is normal. And I'll also hear that from Europeans who go to the US, and I sometimes ask them like, oh, is there anything that stood out to you? They will mention these billboards on the highway with all kinds of things on them. Like stuff you think like, should this really be an ad? Does this need to be an ad? Is there a market for this? Well, apparently there is in America. But I also feel like this ideal is just so rooted in culture that I feel like I almost grew up with this idea that I had all of these problems that I didn't know I had that these material items could solve. Like, I don't know, you hate doing dishes. Well, that's because your kitchen sponge is so boring. Like, your kitchen sponge is giving you depression. Doing dishes wouldn't be so bad if you didn't have this boring sponge. So here is a sponge that is colorful and has a smile on it.
And all of that for the small price of $19.99. So much cheaper than therapy.
It's getting out of control. I mean, this is of course everywhere, but in America, I do think it's really part of the culture, because if I imagine like the standard average American family, I see them in this suburb with a big house with a couple of cars. So not one car, but a couple of cars, and they don't need to be fancy cars, but you know, they have a couple of cars in the house. They have all of this stuff, like, I don't know, random kitchen appliances. So I think the fact that just me and many other Americans have this image says something. It says something about this idea that in the US you kind of think, oh, you need that more money to buy more material items. Whereas here in Europe, in the Netherlands, like, that's less prominent. For instance, you don't even encounter as many ads on a daily basis. Like, I take the metro in Amsterdam often, and when you do, you'll just notice that it's clean. There are no ads in the metro in Amsterdam. Listen, Dutch people watching this, if you're thinking, Ava, that's such a great idea for ads, no, not a great idea for ads, okay? The New York City subway is full of ads, and sometimes I'm just like, can you not have these ads? I would just like a moment, peace and quiet, and I do not need these ads in addition to the 20 other things happening in every single subway car in the New York City subway. It's a lot happening in the New York City subway. But here in the Amsterdam metro, stuff happens, but it's nowhere close, and there are not nearly as many ads. So I want to keep things that way. Okay, so the next thing that I think many people in the US believe, because I've had lots and lots of conversations about this, and I used to believe myself, is that having rights as a worker, as an employee, will make you complacent. So in Europe, you have, in many countries, like a permanent contract, meaning that you can't just be fired willy-nilly from your job. You can't just show up to your job one day and then they will tell you, oh, you don't have a job. Like, that can only happen under very specific circumstances. If you get let go from your job, you are entitled to very many rights. In the US, that's not the case. And in America, people actually believe that, oh my God, if you have a permanent contract, you're not gonna wanna work. You're just gonna sit at your desk and be on the internet all day, or you're gonna find ways to do as little work as possible. And oh my God, first of all, you know, if people are not very motivated at their job, they're gonna find ways to do that anyway, whether or not they have a permanent contract. Like, let me tell you, in the US, there are people who do that anyway. And in Europe, there are also people who do that. And it has nothing to do with having a permanent contract or not. But hold on, at this point, I think I might be confusing some of my American viewers a little bit because they're not familiar with the term permanent contract. So listen, fellow Americans, in Europe and in the Netherlands specifically where I live, if you have been at a job for X amount of time, then legally that company is required to give you a permanent contract. Typically, when you start, you are on what is called a fixed or temporary contract, which means that you sort of work there for a year, 2 years, depending on the length of your contract. And then if they're happy with you and you are happy with them, it is a mutual decision. Then they offer you a permanent contract and you can choose to stay on and continue working at that company. This construction is really very common. And when you have a permanent contract, it comes with way more rights. It means that you are a permanent fixture at the company, and if you happen to be let go for whatever reason because, you know, there's a reorganization, budget cuts, etc., then it's, first of all, not very easy to do that. And second, then you are entitled to severance. That severance is not little. You are also entitled to other things. So you're quite protected. If your company is not going through major budget cuts or reorganizations, and if they have a problem with you, let's say, like they're no longer happy with your working relationship, then they're gonna have to build a big case as to why they want to let you go. So you are really very protected when you have this permanent contract. And that also means that you can keep your job for a very long time. It's great. And that exists in the Netherlands. In the US, not so much. Another thing that is more common in the Netherlands, unions, labor unions. Like as a PhD student, that's what they call you in America, you are not part of a labor union. My wife, who I met in the US, was shocked when she found that out. She couldn't believe that PhDs were not part of a labor union. And when at the university I was at, they did try to set up a union, it just didn't work. It failed because just companies, organizations don't want you to be in a union. They really fight it hardcore in the US. It's wild. And it's wild because in the Netherlands, yeah, as a PhD, you're part of a labor union and a good one too. Very many professions come with you automatically being part of a labor union for that profession. It's amazing. And no, it does not make you complacent. Because honestly, I don't see us humans as necessarily being only constantly motivated by these external motivation factors. We also have our intrinsic motivations. We want to like our job, we want to be happy at a place, we want to be seen, and we want to feel like we're valued. And these are all things that make you feel seen and valued. And it's incredible to me how if you mention this to Americans, their first response is almost always like, oh, but then why would you work if you have this? Well, because you still have to work. That doesn't go away. It's not like you're getting free money now. Congratulations. It just means that you can be protected at your job, and that makes people happy. Being happy makes you want to work better. It's just good economics. All right, everyone. And this next item that I wanted to talk to you about is definitely part of a list that I like to call series of embarrassing things that Ava admits to thousands of people on the internet. And I definitely do not want to admit that I believed in the following, which is that having diversity, equity, and inclusion measures means that you are inhibiting people getting hired based on merit. So I used to believe that if someone was a diversity hire, that meant that they didn't get hired based on merit. Now, if you look at me, and if you know a little bit about me, you might be thinking, why would you, a person of color, female, queer, and lots of other things, why would you think that? And the answer to that is because I thought, well, I don't think anyone wants to be hired just based on their sex or based on the color of their skin, obviously. And yeah, obviously they don't. And obviously that is also not what these measures mean. And that's not what's happening here. Now, I definitely believed this as a teenager in America applying to colleges because that was the relevant situation for me at the time. Because colleges have a lot of DEI measures, what is known as affirmative action in US college applications. I was not a fan. Okay, but fast forward, now I am an adult with a job that I got with my linguistics degree, and I see DEI measures in the workplace. And my thinking around this has changed completely. Also because honestly, frankly, as a teenager, I was just totally ignorant about the actual problems that were going on. Getting straight to it, what I fail to take into account is that DEI measures combat the systematic biases that still exist in our society today that come from generations of inequality. So as an individual, you may not be just fighting the biases that you have stacked against you in your lifetime, but honestly in the lifetimes of generations before you. That is how deeply ingrained discrimination is in our society. So now at the workplace, if you have two people that are equally qualified and one person based on their description has, probably overcome way more biases, discriminations in order to get to that point than another person, yeah, that says something. And that's just one way of making sure that you are leveling the playing field. So it's not necessarily like, oh, we're just gonna hire anybody. That's just not what this is about. But that can often be the rhetoric surrounding this topic, which I think is really, really unfortunate. Because having different perspectives does contribute to a more healthier workplace, better decisions. You don't want to just be in a room full of brads, like, why? Why would you want that for yourself? You would want to be in a room full of different, interesting, and diverse people. So even when it comes to workplace gezelligheid, you would want that. Now, in America, this idea is taken to the extreme at this point. And as an American, I did believe in that extreme that, diversity meant like you never have anything based on merit. And that has completely changed over time, and that feeling has only gotten stronger for me since I moved to the Netherlands. Now, this is not to say that everyone in Europe and in the Netherlands is like, yes, DEI, we love it, we want it. I happen to work at a university and that is the case there, but in general, it is not quite there yet. But diversity, equity, inclusion practices are not under attack as they are in the US. So that is different. But interestingly, there was this example recently where the Netherlands has changed the way they kind of build up your pension, where there's a lot of weight put into your early years. So if you work a lot then and you earn more money then you will build up more pension over time. So they've changed the regulations to kind of make that happen. And I read that, well, they actually weren't considering the fact that women often at that part in their lives work less because they have kids and they might work less in general and there might be other factors going on. So then you might actually increase the gender pay gap in retirement. And it was funny because reading this article about this, some of the experts talking about this were saying, well, you know, this could be because the decision makers, who are probably not women, have a completely different life experience and didn't look at it from that perspective. So not just workplace gezelligheid, but also just for making decisions, it is helpful to have different perspectives because you would want to serve a wider community and not just all the Brads in the world, if you get what I mean. Okay, and just throwing this out there, if you are someone with a lot of privilege saying, hey, 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 ho, 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 I may have some privilege, but my life isn't super, super amazing, and everything you're saying still sounds unfair to me, then let me tell you that life is unfair in your favor. So whatever privilege you do have and whatever your life is, just know that it would probably be worse if you didn't have that privilege. And you know what? That holds for me, that holds for us all. Things could always be worse. And I hope you interpret that as a positive message, that we should be happy with what we have. And the final myth that I believed as an American living in the United States, that I no longer believe since I moved to the Netherlands, is that in order to be good at your job, you need to really sacrifice, make big sacrifices in your private life. That is just not the case. You do not need to work overtime in order to be good at your job or be seen as someone who is good at their job. You do not need to be working on the weekends in order to be seen as someone who is good at their job. Work-life balance is extremely important here in the Netherlands, and very many people have it. At least it's more balanced than in the US, where you're often required to work late. I know that jobs that used to be 9 to 5, even when I still lived there, were more like 8:30 to 6:30. And that's because working 9 to 5 is somehow seen as slacking off. Like, that's very strange to me. In the Netherlands, that's totally fine. Also, many jobs don't even come with a 40-hour work week anymore. They come with a 38 or 36-hour work week. I still don't fully understand the whole reasoning and how all of this works behind it, but hey, that's just the case. But what is definitely true is that people really value their private time, and I think that is great. And now I no longer believe that I need to be working late and on weekends and sacrifice my private life visibly to show everyone how much I'm working in order to be seen as being good at my job. Ever since I moved to the Netherlands, I no longer feel the need to just stay late for the sake of staying late at work, just to make a point that I am always available and completely dedicated to my job, because there are other things that can show that besides staying late and sacrificing your private time, which nobody asks you to do. That's how people view that here in the Netherlands. So those are some things I used to believe when I lived in the United States, and I no longer do now that I live in the Netherlands. So I am curious if you have any of your own personal myths. Feel free to share them in the comments down below. And as usual, until next time, doei!